So guys, despite a draw against Fulham and a loss against Grimsby Town in the Carabao Cup early exit for Manchester United, you're going to find out that most of the Manchester United problems are not actually tactical problems. But in this video, I want to talk about all the tactical wrongs that Ruben Amorim has been committing in Manchester United in the past two games. And I'm going to analyze the Fulham and the Grimsby game, and I'm going to show you pictures of what Ruben Amorim needs to change to maximize the abilities of the Manchester United players. So guys, let's dive into this video together. So we are going to be talking about the Fulham game first. And if you look at the Fulham game, in the early hours of the Fulham games, Manchester United was very consistent in all the phases, in all the sequences. We were winning all the duels. Fernandes and Casemiro were winning all the deals. They were very consistent. They were pressing high. The team was playing well. There was a lot of turnovers we were playing. But at some point when these players got tired, their weaknesses begin to show, and that tells you that these players cannot be able to play this system consistently for a longer period of time. The pivots we have cannot be able to play this system for a longer period of time because of the 5-2-3 shape that Ruben Amorim was using to press in the Fulham game. And you are going to find out that 80% of our problems in the Fulham game came from the midfield, especially when Iwobi dropped and was playing with the Fulham midfield. That actually created a 3 versus 2 overload between the Fulham midfield and the Manchester United midfield, and that most of the times was very difficult for Bruno Fernandes and Casemiro to cover a lot of spaces, and that was the genesis of our problems. That was how Fulham began to dominate Manchester United and begin to have a lot of the ball in the game. And despite this 3 versus 2 overload that Marco Silva created in the midfield, there was actually a solution that Ruben Amorim would have actually implemented. Either he defended with a back four, or he actually make Cunha Mbeumo and Cunha to drop into the second line and form like a 5-4-1 shape that is going to help at least negate the space that was between Bruno Fernandes and Casemiro, because at some point Bruno Fernandes and Casemiro, they were caught between two players. They were caught between marking a certain player or going for the other, and that actually made their job very difficult in that game. Because just imagine you having 2 versus 1 every time in the midfield and you not having the legs to cover this amount of space. It's going to lead to a lot of turnovers for Fulham, and that was what happened in longer periods of the game. And Ruben Amorim actually did not decide to change particular situation in the game, and it actually affected Manchester United because Bruno Fernandes and Casemiro can be able to be consistent in covering some portion of grounds for some maybe 45 minutes or less in a game, but these are players that cannot be able to carry out this winning of duels for 45 minutes or more in a game. And Amorim actually need to change some things when it comes to the midfield situation, because this is something that Manchester United has struggled a lot with, and you could see in the Fulham game it was very evident. Manchester United were struggling and we were not able to win deals, we were not able to keep possessions, and these are things that Ruben Amorim should be looking to be working in the game, because Manchester United need to be on the front foot. Manchester United need to hold more possession. We need to change our pressing system from the 5-2-3 structure to the 4-4-2 structure that was used in the Arsenal's game. And so guys, you're also going to find out that when in the preseason and when we played the Arsenal game, Ruben Amorim actually played with a 4-4-2 pressing structure, and that was by far the best way Manchester United has approached a game under Ruben Amorim. We were able to contain the opponents, we were able to press effectively, we were able to force turnovers from the team. But him reverting to the 5-3-2 against Fulham and against Grimsby Town was actually detrimental to Manchester United, because then Manchester United began to struggle again. Our pressing structure is not able to accommodate the opponent's back three. You could see from the picture I'm showing you, you're going to find out that Cunha Mbeumo has a lot of space to cover, and this 5-3-2 pressing structure actually makes Manchester United most dangerous players to be in far more defensive position. You're going to find out that in that picture there is no sign of Amad Diallo. Amad Diallo is supposed to be in that picture. Cunha Mbeumo and Amad Diallo are players that should be complementing each other. They should be close to each other as much as possible. These are players that should be more close to goal as much as possible. But because of this structure and because of the inability of the defenders to jump into tackles quickly, this is going to make the fullbacks to be in a more defensive position instead of them standing in a more offensive position, instead of them to pin the opposition fullbacks down. Because of our structure, is making the Fulham team instead to pin our wing backs down, and this is actually going to make our players to be be in more defensive position. And even when you have the ball for a quick transition or a quick counter attack, you are not going to commit a lot of players forward. You are not going to have a lot of players forward to be able to break down the Fulham defense. So this is something that Amorim needs to change, because this is making our most dangerous players. If at some point Cunha and Mbeumo were tired in the game because they were covering a lot of space, they are dropping too deep to cover a lot of large spaces, which is not supposed to be so. Our formation is supposed to be pinning the opposition back. Our using of wing backs is supposed to be an advantage to be pinning the opposition fullbacks down. Our fullbacks are not supposed to let the fullbacks of the opposition team to come and just like in the Arsenal game. But in the Fulham game and the Grimsby Town game, we have actually not seen that. And so this is something that Ruben Amorim needs to change immediately, because Manchester United need to have their most dangerous players in more dangerous positions. So guys, let's actually talk about the Grimsby Town game. When you're looking at the Grimsby Town game, you're going to find out that there was a lot of tactical woes in Manchester United, and it felt like at some point many Manchester United players did not know the position they were occupying, and this is probably down to rotation, because if Amorim plays a lot of the players, if he was rotating a lot of the players in the preseason, it would have given players more leverage to know the system more. Because if you find that during the ending of the preseason, Amorim did not rotate the team a lot more frequently than he would have, and this has made some players not to be able to be used to this pattern early. And if you watch the build-up leading to their first goal, you're going to find out that the full-backs were not even in the picture, and the three central backs were stuck on who to pick out and who to mark, and that was how the first goal came. And this is something that actually needs to change in Manchester United, because at some point in that Grimsby Town game, it felt like too much players were being committed forward and they could not recover frequently. And at some point, you're going to find out that too much players were being committed behind and they could not also build up effectively. Despite having more players behind, we could not actually build up from the back against Grimsby Town, and it resulted to Andre Onana going long and we were losing a lot of position, and that actually made Grimsby Town to dominate Manchester United for almost 45 minutes of the game. If you look at the heat map, you're going to find out Grimsby Town dominated Manchester United for over 45 minutes of the game. This is actually very worrying for Manchester United, because we cannot have a 4th division tier team dominating Manchester United for a whole 45 minutes of the game. This is something that needs to work on tactically. Manchester United needs to change. Ruben Amorim needs to change a lot of things. The players that are committed forward and committed backwards should be balanced. There should be some kind of balance in the Manchester United team, and I feel that the balance is not yet there, because our wing backs should be our weapon that should be using to pin the opposition fullbacks down. You should be using the fullbacks as a leverage to pin down teams that are using a 4-man back formation, but instead we are being the ones that are being pinned down. We are being the team that is being exploited, and this is something that Manchester United and Ruben Amorim needs to work on ASAP, because if we don't work on these tactical woes and these small tactical issues, Manchester United is going to struggle in our 3rd Premier League game against Fulham. And also guys, just to mention, at some point in the Grimsby Town game, you're going to find out that 7 players were committed forward and they could not use a definitive attacking sequence to break down the Grimsby Town defensive line. 7 players were committed forward and we could not see a definitive pattern, and this is something I've always been talking in my videos where I talked about the philosophy of Ruben Amorim. I've not really seen a definitive pattern, a philosophy that Manchester United use in breaking down opposition team. We don't yet have a good attacking sequence that we use to break down opposition team, and personally for me, I feel it boils down to the whole midfield. The midfield is not strong enough, and this is actually going to impact the way Cunha Mbeumo and Cunha is going to play for Manchester United this season, because these are players that should be committed forward as much as possible. These are players that should be kept close to goal as much as possible, but instead they waste most of their time covering large spaces instead of trying to score goals, instead of trying to be in more dangerous position as much as possible. This is something that actually needs to change in Manchester United. And if you find that most of the time Benjamin Sesko makes a lot of runs, he makes a lot of in-behind runs, but instead he's not being found, and instead of Ruben Amorim and Cunha that are supposed to be occupying good position, to be trying to be creating chance for Benjamin Sesko to score goals, instead they waste their time trying to cover large spaces, and Benjamin Sesko most of the time that he's supposed to be making runs in behind waste time to be dropping deep to try to connect to the midfield. This is something that he was never supposed to be doing. Benjamin Sesko was meant to be running channels, splitting defensive line. He was meant to be making runs in behind to score goals, but instead, because of the midfield state and because of some of the pressing structure, the tactical rules of the team, he's been made to occupy positions that he's not supposed to be occupying. He's made to be in positions that he's not supposed to be, and so this is what I actually feel that Ruben Amorim needs to change analyzing the game against Fulham and analyzing the game against Grimsby Town, Ruben Amorim needs to change his pressing structure. He needs to change some things in the midfield, because this is something that the Premier League teams are going to be starting to exploit from now, especially Burnley. They're going to target us during set piece. You could see that set piece is a situation for Manchester United against Fulham. It seems like almost the set piece they were playing was like penalty kicks. You're going to find out the same thing against Grimsby Town. They scored with a corner kick. Andre Onana could not high claim a ball. So this is something that Manchester United need to work on. We have a lot to work on tactically, set piece wise. Manchester United need to work on a lot of things, and we have to actually sort out that disconnection we normally have in the attack. The disconnection and the imbalance we have in our attacking sequence is not being sorted out, and I'm afraid Cunha Mbeumo and Sesko will not be able to succeed. But if that is being sorted out by the Burnley game or by the Manchester derby next month, I believe Manchester United is going to come good. So guys, this is all I have for this video. I've actually talked about how Manchester United played against Grimsby Town and how Manchester United played against Fulham. I want you guys to like, to share, to subscribe to Trafford, as I'll be making more videos about Manchester United. See you guys in my next video.